What's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, a really positive story, probably the best news and the biggest update that we've gotten in the Ronnie Coleman situation over the last couple of weeks. So as you guys know, Ronnie has been hospitalized for weeks now for sepsis, and we had been getting these updates from his family and nothing quite yet from Ronnie directly until today. So I think this is a really good sign that not only does Ronnie seem to have all his faculties about him, he seems to be very cognizant and conscious and aware of what's going on. He talked for a few minutes in this video, but giving this health update directly from him himself, and he's not in a coma, he's not in a hospital bed, he's not hooked up to a bunch of machines. I think this is a really encouraging, probably the best update that we've gotten so far, hearing it from Ronnie directly himself. Now, I don't know that this necessarily means he's completely out of the woods yet. I believe he still has a pretty substantial recovery process to go through from here on out. But seeing and hearing Ronnie talk, I think, has been a major positive, encouraging development for a lot of bodybuilding fans, and I'm certainly happy to see it. I think it, at the very least, is a positive sign. And I think when this whole thing started a couple weeks ago, it seemed rather bleak in the beginning, and I don't think many of us really knew if we would hear from Ronnie, maybe even again. But I'm just going to go ahead and play the clip of everything that Ronnie said, let you hear it from Ronnie directly in his words. But in my opinion, this is probably the best update, the biggest update that we've had about Ronnie Coleman since this whole thing started. So here's what Ronnie had to say.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Ron here. Man, let me tell you, these past few weeks have been some of the toughest of my life. Your boy was hit with sepsis, and it nearly killed me. Had it not been for my 13-year-old daughter, it probably would have. Now, y'all know me. I've been faced with some battles in my life, but nothing like this. I'm still here because the grace of God still wants me to be here. And the support I get from all of y'all, that all helps out a whole lot. Now, I kind of feel a little responsibility to use my platform to raise some awareness to this thing we call sepsis. Because, like me, people don't even know what sepsis is until it's too late. That's why I've decided to support the Sepsis Alliance, and I'm asking you to stand with me in a Ronnie strong movement. Yeah, buddy. So I'm gonna let God use me as he has done my whole entire life, because not once did I ask to be here, and not once am I going to ask to leave here. God brought me here, and God is going to have me to leave here when it's time for me to go. Yeah, buddy. Lightweight, baby. Y'all know, like I know, that it still ain't nothing but a peanut. And now it means just a little bit more.
Now, next up in the news, here's something we haven't talked about in a while, or something we haven't said in a video in a while. We got a brand new physique update from Chris Bumstead today. Obviously, Chris into his retirement now. He had the caption on this post that he's retired from the stage but not retired from the work. And I think obviously the takeaway from this physique update was that he still has it. I mean, he still has an elite level professional looking physique even into his retirement. And I think this leaves a lot of people still feeling like there's potential that maybe we haven't seen the last of Chris on stage, and maybe he does make a comeback at some point. And I just want to, I kind of feel that way too. That's kind of my feeling towards this. I mean, I understand that Chris wanted to take some time, to spend with his family and focus on, other career endeavors and prioritize his health. And I do think it's a really admirable thing that Chris was able to step away at the top of his game. He didn't stick around too long. He didn't wait until he started losing. He walked away as the #1 classic physique competitor in the history of that division. I think that's undeniable, and not many people get to say that they've done that. But he is only 30 years old, recently 30, just like months ago he turned 30. And seeing him still looking like this, obviously I don't think he could step on the Olympia stage looking like this. I mean, obviously this is not the same Chris Bumstead, but still looking like this in his retirement. He's not prepping for anything. He's not training for the Olympia. He is spending more time with his family. He is prioritizing his health. But if this is what it looks like on his physique, taking time away, and again, he's only 30, what's to say 5 years from now, maybe even 10 years from now, he doesn't make a comeback, maybe even in another division? I mean, a lot of the guys that we're talking about now, if you go over to the open bodybuilding side, going into the open bodybuilding Olympia, Samson Dauda, 39. Hadi Chupin, 38. Big Ramy is 40. But I think the best examples, Hadi and Samson, they were the top two at last year's Olympia, both of them almost 40 years old. So the point is, if this is what it looks like for Chris to take a break and he still is able to maintain this type of physique, I don't think there's any reason to believe that in 5 years' time, so he would be 35 years old, if he wanted to make a full-blown comeback and maybe try men's open bodybuilding again, there's really no reason to think that he couldn't do that. He could take a break for 5 years, spend all the time with the family that he wants, and he would still only be 35 years old. I see a Chris Bumstead comeback in the realm of possibility. I feel like he's going to miss the stage, and just seeing him look like this, selfishly, I want to see him come back. But I think you really have to look at the Chris Bumstead thing in context with the perspective of how young he actually is. And it's kind of hard to believe considering how much he achieved in classic physique in the time that he was there. But retiring at 30, he's really got all the time in the world if he did want to make a comeback. And that's not to mention, you look at the classic physique Olympia qualified competitor list. There's 50 names on that list right now of qualified Olympia caliber classic physique guys. And many of them are more than a decade older than Chris right now, still going to the Olympia. I just don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And I think if you want to talk about, some of the updates that we've been seeing from some of the top classic physique prospects at this year's Olympia, guys that we're talking about for first call out, guys that we're talking about for that top 5 range, look no further than Breon Ainsley. After he made his announcement that he's going to be staying in classic physique and not 212, Breon is 45 years old, 15 years older than Chris Bumstead. And while I personally don't think Breon will win the title again, I think we are realistically still talking about Breon as being first call-out, potential top 5 guy this year at 45 years old. So again, the point is, in context, in reference to Chris, he's got all the time in the world. He could take a decade off and come back at 40 and probably still be competitive. I guess the only flip side would be for Chris if he did come back in classic physique. Classic physique seems to have changed so much from year to year, like the standards in classic. And I think a lot of that's because it's been around for such a short amount of time that I think the one thing that would maybe work against Chris if he did come back, say 10 years from now, is who knows how much that division, classic, changes in the next 10 years. That's kind of why I think maybe an open bodybuilding comeback would be more realistic. Because you can say what you want about Open and the different types of champions that we've had. I don't think it's changed as far as the standards as much as Classic Physique has in the last 10 years or so. And then I think if you look at some of these other recent updates, aside from Breon, if we're talking about Ramon, we're talking about Terrence, we're talking about Mike Sommerfeld, you're talking about Urs Kalasinski. These guys are all front runners going into the Olympia this year, the Classic Physique Olympia. But what's the other thing they all have in common? Chris has beat them all routinely. So if I'm Chris and he's sitting at home watching the Olympia this year, and one of these guys that he's routinely beaten during his reign wins his Olympia title now that it's vacant, well, not his title because it's vacant now, it's hard for me to imagine that wouldn't light some kind of motivation, some kind of a fire under Chris that makes him want to come back and win it one more time. Seeing somebody that, I mean, realistically, one of the guys that Chris has routinely beaten is going to win this year. Unless you have somebody come completely out of the woodwork that Chris has never been in a call-out with, come out of nowhere and win the Olympia this year. But realistically, it's one of the guys that Chris has beaten every year. And I just think there's no way Chris sits and watches the Olympia this year and sees one of these guys win, and that doesn't make him feel something, some type of desire to compete again or come back, whether it's in Classic or Open or what have you. And I think there's probably a good portion of people that probably think, well, who cares if Chris comes back or not? It's time for a new champion. Let's let someone new get the title. I feel like it's significant because we talked about Ronnie Coleman in the beginning of this video. I would say Chris is the Ronnie Coleman equivalent in Classic Physique in the sense of how dominant he was. Classic Physique had never seen anything like it before and may never see anything like it again. We don't know if anybody is ever going to tie Chris's record. And Chris, like I said, went out on top. He's still currently, at the time of this video, there's been no new Mr. Olympia crowned. Chris is still currently the greatest Classic Physique competitor that the division has ever seen. So, of course, people are going to romanticize a comeback before the Olympias even happened, especially when you consider how young Chris is and all the time that he still has. I really don't think it's an unrealistic thing. We've seen bodybuilders like Kevin Levrone. Granted, they didn't come back and do crazy damage, but Kevin Levrone, Flex Wheeler, we've seen them come back late 40s, early 50s, and compete at the Olympia. Chris is only 30. And I think that might be the strongest point, because like even talking about Rami, we're talking about him coming back this year at the age of 40, and people are still talking about, well, he could maybe win. He could maybe be first call-out. He could maybe be top 3. In the case of Chris, a comeback from Chris Bumstead would be the most realistic because he is so young. We're talking about guys in their 40s coming back in open bodybuilding and doing damage. Chris could come back at 32, 33, who knows? But it would be a realistic comeback. It wouldn't be, maybe he'll crack the top 10. It would still be the conversation of, Chris is probably going to win this thing. Now, I think the coolest thing would be, give it a couple years. Give the division a little bit of room to breathe. Let's see what kind of direction they go with Classic Physique. Let's see who they crown as champion for maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. And I'd like to see Chris come back at like 33, 34, 35 after we've had a couple years, few years of a new champion, of maybe a new direction for Classic Physique. Let's see who rises to the top, and then see if Chris comes back and is able to reclaim the title and still be the top guy. Because I think you don't want to see Chris come back too soon. You don't want to see him come back too late. I think it would be a sweet spot to have maybe a new champ for a couple years. That would be Chris's new rival and have a nice, cool final chapter. I would also like to see him come back and do open, though. I don't even know. I really kind of doubt that because he says that his health is a main focus, and I think pursuing open would be a bigger cost to his health than Classic would. I feel like we'll see a Chris Bumstead come back someday. I give it 5 years, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Now, the final story that I've got for you guys today, Keone Pearson did a guest posing this past weekend at the NPC at Twin Cities Open. And I've got to say, this might be the biggest that I've seen Keone ever look at a guest posing. He's full as a house here. We're getting close to the 12-week out mark now from the Olympia, so he's in prep. You can see a lot of separation. You can see detail in his physique, so it's not like he's just a big bloated off-season mess. But for a guy that's in relatively good shape, guest posing shape, this is probably the biggest and fullest and most impressive I've seen Keone at a guest posing. Keone just has such an insane physique, man. It's hard to overstate. And it really is versions of his physique like this, where he's big, he's full, he's not worried about the 212 weight limit right now. It's versions of Keone like this where I can really see the possibility of an open bodybuilding career. He looks insane here. He looks great. And even to that point, aside from how big he looks here, you take the consideration we are still around 13 weeks out from the Olympia. You're seeing hamstring separation. You're seeing pretty deep separation in the quads. You're seeing a lot of detail in the back. You're seeing vascularity in the chest, the shoulders, the arms. This is a really in-shape Keone as well for this far out from the Olympia, combined with the fullness that he's got. It's very impressive. I don't think Keone will ever be dethroned as long as he stays in 212. I don't see this new Keone that's been winning the Olympia. I don't see this new Keone getting beaten while he chooses to stay in that division. I think that division is just his as long as he's there. But that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. I hope you did, in fact, enjoy it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.